What Elizabeth does is intelligent and subtle. She simply does not want to have the conversation that Melville has travelled to her court to try and have with her. She refuses to do it. And what she does is she invokes femininity to simply evade this conversation. And he is climbing the walls with frustration.
But then he goes back to Mary, and he's not fooled at all. He says, you cannot trust Elizabeth.
There are nothing but jealousies and suspicion.
But the two women hide their suspicions behind a charm offensive.
We shall present to the world such friendship as has never been seen.
They seem to compete in their declarations of love. Elizabeth sends Mary a diamond ring, but Mary goes one better.
Mary sends Elizabeth her portrait. It's a miniature portrait in a heart-shaped diamond ring, and she sends it with Petrarchan, almost love lyrics. And it's this sort of sense that she's wooing Elizabeth, she wants to meet her.
Mary's most comfortable writing in French.
Donc, chère sœur, si cette carte suit l'affection d'une voix qui me presse, c'est que je suis en peine et en tristesse, si promptement le fait ne s'en ensuite.
Mary's obsession with being recognised as Elizabeth's heir to the English throne made her easy to manipulate. Elizabeth could deal with this. She's dealing with someone who wants what only Elizabeth can give. It's marvellous.
But Elizabeth avoids actually meeting her cousin.
Mary was renowned for her charisma, for her charm. It was said that anyone who came within 10 feet of the Queen of Scots would fall in love with her. Now, I think Elizabeth had heard that, and she believed it, and she feared it. She didn't want to like Mary.
Having failed to meet and charm Elizabeth, Mary tries a new scheme to strengthen her claim to the crown. Marriage. But Elizabeth is not about to let her cousin marry one of her powerful European rivals.
I recommend some fit nobleman within the island. But I declare no child of France, Spain, or Austria will be acceptable. And your right and title to the English crown will depend much on your marriage.
The root problem is Elizabeth regards herself as the superior queen, and she regards Mary as a satellite queen, and no Scot, then or now, would accept that.
Elizabeth isn't like other queens. She has little interest in marriage. That would mean handing power to a husband. No husband means no chance of an heir, no matter how much Burleigh badgers her.
God send our mistress a husband, and by him a son, that we may hope our posterity shall have a masculine succession.
I am already bound unto a husband, which is the kingdom of England. As many as are English are my children. If I am to disclose to you what I prefer if I follow the inclination of my nature, I will tell you. It is this: beggar woman and single, far rather than queen and married.
I think the reason Elizabeth chose not to marry had an awful lot to do with the examples from which she had learned in childhood. So, of course, it's not a great role model, the fact that her mother, Anne Boleyn, is executed by her father. But I think it went further than that for Elizabeth. There have been a number of scandals surrounding her. At the age of just 13, the first major scandal erupted.
Her stepfather, Thomas Seymour, came into Elizabeth's bedroom early in the morning and basically, you might say he sexually touched her.
His wife, Catherine, was actually complicit in this, and there's one occasion described where she held Elizabeth down while her husband cut Elizabeth's gown into 100 pieces.
I could not do withal, for she held me while the Lord Admiral cut it.
I've thought about this for over 30 years, and I now think that Elizabeth had probably pretty much decided that she never would marry. And I think the reason for this is simply those teenage experiences when she had seen how men could behave. The one exception is Lord Robert Dudley. And she was in love with him. There's absolutely no question that he was the only man she ever truly loved.
My true opinion is that she will never marry. I know Her Majesty as well or better than anyone else. We were friends before she was 8 years old. She has always said she would never do so. But if by chance she should change her mind, I'm practically assured she would choose no one else but me. She told me so herself quite openly on more than one occasion.
But even love is just a pawn in the Queen's game. Elizabeth is willing to sacrifice Lord Robert. She knows he'll always be loyal to her.
If I had ever wanted to take a husband, I would have married him myself. But being determined to end my life in virginity, I wish that my sister should marry him. Being matched with him would remove out of my mind all fear of usurpation before my death. He is so loving, trusty, that he would never suffer such a thing to be attempted.
Mary is insulted by Elizabeth's suggestion that she should marry Lord Robert. He's not even a very high aristocrat. He's the son of a traitor, and he is Elizabeth's discarded suitor.
Do you think it might stand with my honor to marry a subject? Being assured of me, you might let me marry where I best like.
And Elizabeth has this sort of weird idea that they will have a sort of ménage à trois at Elizabeth's court. I mean, it's very strange.
If the Queen, my sister, is pleased to live with me in household, I will gladly bear the charges of the family, as shall one sister do for another.
I do mind to use my own choice in marriage. I will no longer be fed with yea or nay and depend on uncertain dealings.
The sisterly pretense is over. Mary decides on her own potential husband, an Englishman and a Catholic, her cousin, Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley.
Darnley's actually a really good bet for Mary. He's got royal blood, which strengthens her own claim to the English throne. Moreover, he represents something extremely unusual for elite women in the 16th century, and particularly queens. He's young, he's handsome, he's desirable.
He is the lustiest and best proportioned tall man that I have ever seen.
Mary's desire scandalizes her court. The gossip gets back to Elizabeth through her ambassador, Thomas Randolph.
She is seized in love in more fervent passions than is comely for any mean personage. Some report she is bewitched. Shame is laid aside.
Darnley is but a pawn, but he may well checkmate me if he is promoted.
I think Elizabeth was very suspicious of Mary's motives when it came to Lord Darnley, because Darnley too had royal blood. In fact, he was one of the strongest claimants to the English throne. So she undoubtedly saw this as an aggressive move on Mary's part, that she was considering marriage to this man.
A Catholic couple on the Scottish throne could attract the support of England's enemies, France and Spain. So Elizabeth simply puts any question of succession on hold.
Elizabeth turns round and says that she will not name her successor until she decides whether she'll marry.
Nothing shall be done until I shall be married, or shall notify my determination never to marry.
This is heartbreaking for Mary. She feels played. You know, all the letters, the gifts, the petitions, it feels completely wasted.
It shall turn to your discredit more than my loss. I will not fail.